Hello, welcome to another episode of the Yoga Well podcast. I'm Chase Bossart, the Executive Director of the Yoga Well Institute, and today I have with me Jess Demshar and Meg Bratt, who are longtime yoga teachers and yoga execs, and a lot of you know them because they are working in the back office of the Yoga Well Institute. They have very interesting yoga stories, and they have been working together in the yoga industry for more than 20 years. Let me start with you, Jess. Give us a little backstory of what happened.
So I came into yoga in 2004 in Denver, Colorado. And, my life is full of these types of stories. Like I started practicing and my third week of going to the studio manager at the time, Eddie Dugan, was like, just stop me going out of class. And he's like, hey, I have a cleaning position open and you could practice here for free if you want to do that. And I was a student and I was like, yeah, great. So I did that. And then again, as things often happen, 3 months later, I was running the program at the studio. I have this curse that I end up running or being in charge of just about everything I get involved with. And in that studio process, it was with Core Power Yoga, which was founded in Denver. And it was at the time that Core Power was really getting off the ground. So anyone involved with the studio was kind of all hands on deck, contributing to the launch of what that company has become. So while my position was a trade position or a seva position, as they're often called, we were all doing everything we could to, we would go to new studio openings, we would give feedback to new teachers. It was often the cleaning staff and the studio support team would be asked to attend a lot of practice teachings. So it was very much you were right there, a part of what was happening. But it wasn't until 2009 that I did my first teacher training. And that was, again, kind of a very interesting. I was supposed to be doing a study abroad program in Chiapas, Mexico with the Zapatistas. And for various reasons, it fell through. And I had saved up a bunch of money and it was hey, do teacher training. And I was like, oh, I can pay for it because I was going to do this and now I'm going to do this. And so I did that. And Meg, who's sitting here with us, is the person who was leading that teacher training. So Meg and I know each other from Denver, from Core Power, completely unrelated to finding ourselves here at Yoga Well. And, I did the teacher training. My semester abroad was supposed to be my final semester. So I actually graduated from university shortly after teacher training, and I was supposed to go into international law. I'd taken the LSAT and was kind of wanting to take about a year to figure out exactly where I wanted to go. My degrees in politics, culture, social movement. I was lecturing on human trafficking and immigration issues at the university level, and looking at that law track. But I just started teaching. And again, this was at a time, so this is now 2009, right? And I think anybody that's been in the yoga world knows that that was when things kind of blew up. That was the moment that yoga got its footing in the US. It had been here certainly, and it was an industry in and of itself, or it was a practice, but it was definitely very fringe. I had a great uncle who used to come visit who did yoga, and he was so weird. Right? As a kid, what is this? And the mat he would use was just the craziest thing. But I started teaching and I was on this little sabbatical from school and everything blew up. I mean, we couldn't put enough classes on the schedule. We couldn't open enough studios to meet the demand. So within about 9 months, I was teaching full time and had a paid position in studio management. And the wave just kept rising. So that, before I knew it, it was 5 years and I hadn't gone to law school. And before I knew it again, it was, 7 years, and on and on and on until I did eventually step away from studio management. I stepped away from all teacher trainings and was just teaching it for probably the last 4 or 5 years of my teaching career. And then the pandemic happened. And I used to joke that when I exited the teaching profession, I wanted to just like have one day it just be my last class, like no notice, no anything like that. Because I was teaching 20 classes a week. I taught over.
Yeah, it's
I
like
have the
a
actual
common
numbers of the
thing in
math,
the
10,000 plus hours of teaching. At one point it was noted that I'd had 130,000 individual students over that period of teaching. And so, and I was definitely feeling like that road was coming to an end for me, but careful what you put out into the universe, because literally that's what happened. My last class was a Sunday night that I subbed at a studio I wasn't usually at, and the world shut down. Like the company, at the time they announced the closure on Instagram before telling everyone at the studio. So like I was teaching and everyone's phones were blowing up because phones in studios still happen these days. But yeah, and that was it. I haven't taught since, but kind of getting to wrapping up, I thought, great, I'm never going to work in yoga again. And and I was ready to move on. I was like, I did that was awesome, but I was also unemployed and had a number of other extenuating circumstances, and a person that I really trusted and admired who was helping me with the job search was like, hey, someone in my network has this position at this Yoga Well Institute place. I remember it was yoga therapy, and Meg and I had we'd lost touch a little bit. Like Denver, you'd moved to different parts of the city. Like,
I wasn't teaching at corporate for a long time.
You weren't teaching at Core Power corporate studios, but I remember running into you, and you were doing your yoga therapy training with this guy out in San Francisco, who at the time was, I think, having you fly out every month.
That's for the 500
for the 500 hour, yeah. And I remember having that conversation with you, and I distinctly remember being like, what kind of person requires people to fly out every month to study with them? Like, that guy's got to be crazy. And he's my boss now, currently, Chase Bossart.
Yeah, that was the old the Healing Yoga Foundation in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we did that.
So all that's to say that I got, Meg and I it was like, I reached out to Meg when I made the connection, like, oh my gosh, like I'm applying for this position and you're there. And so we've come back together here, which is just wild. So Meg, it's been a crazy journey.
Yeah, well, it covers all aspects of the yoga industry. Mm-hmm. And, Core Power has, for those who are not very familiar, Core Power has been enormously commercially successful, mm-hmm. with large number of studios and really taught a large number of people in a very vigorous physical style of asana. Mm-hmm. And and then even with the pandemic, they mm-hmm. shut down completely and then re-arose as a completely online. I don't think they have a single studio. Do you know? Did they?
Oh yeah, all their studios are open, but they've moved their online component. Like they still have, I think, over 200 studios, but a lot of things have moved online. I mean, I think we'll get into this more in this discussion, and just like this industry is very versatile, and has changed a lot.
Meg, how about you? What was the arc of your experience in yoga?
Yeah, I started practicing when I was in San Francisco, and I didn't know you at all then. That was 2000. Moved to Colorado in 03, 04, started teaching yoga in 05. And again, at Core Power, it was a small group of guys that owned a few studios, and the ability to teach a lot and be involved in trainings. And they used to have lifestyle programs like nutrition and deepening of practice, sort of continuing education for practitioners that they didn't last for long, but I was able to also, same as Jess, be involved in studio management as well, and mentoring other teachers. I moved toward a franchise because there was a little more freedom in managing a franchise than the branding of being at a corporate studio. But even then, still very specific. But yeah, I found Chase when he was lecturing with Mr. Demshar in late 2009, and what are these guys drinking? They're calling me out on all of my stuff. This is what I need. And so I took the 500-hour back and forth out of San Francisco while I was in Colorado, and then to Nashville to take my therapist training with Chase as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've been working for the Yoga Well Institute, or for me, for at least 10 years now.
Yeah, like 2016 maybe. I was still in the therapist.
8 years,
the end of the therapist
like
training.
That. Okay.
I feel like.
Yeah, when Mr. Demshar came to the Yoga Journal Conference in 2009 in Colorado, and then he had that we hosted, the Healing Yoga Foundation hosted in San Francisco for a week after that. In early October, he had, completely unexpected and totally without my knowing, he just called me onto the stage for everything that he did. And then he would throw out some ideas, and then he would turn to me and say, "Now, my friend, we'll add some spice." And I was like, I was really put on the spot, and really, I have to say that experience gave me the confidence actually to go forward in a way that, I had his blessing. And then, actually he determined the date of my wedding, because he told me he wanted to come to my wedding and that he would be able to make it if it was the Tuesday after these workshops ended in October. And my wife said, "I'm sorry, we're not getting married on a Tuesday." No way. And so then, and the venue we wanted was booked on Saturday, the Saturday after, etc. So anyway, there's a bunch of finagling, and we got married on Sunday, and he and his wife both attended our wedding. Yeah, really sweet. So the yoga industry, if you want to call this spiritual path such a terrible description, has changed so much in these times. And, we started being online 2011, 2012, definitely we were online. I mean, it's happened so long ago that I'm hard to find my records about, like, what was I teaching. It was like, I really only did it to prove to my wife that it was not a viable way of teaching, because, I was traveling basically through at least 3, sometimes 4 weekends a month. And I was, I'd leave on a Friday morning, I'd get back on Sunday night. I missed the whole weekend. I'm tired, I'm grouchy, etc. And my wife is like, online. I'm like, look, it's not going to work. So I'll show you. So, I had all these emails, because everywhere I went, I got email lists. I got online. I created a course for Yoga Sutras and another course for breathing, for pranayama ratios. And I sent it out, and lo and behold, it was like totally viable. And it was like, it meant that I could travel one less weekend a month immediately. And it was like, okay, this actually does work. And, then it has slowly evolved. But now, like, the way it's being used generally is so different than what happened when we started. And I think that's something we should talk about.
Well, and, just to sort of piggyback on that a little bit, just even I think we all, especially as things started to turn online with the pandemic, it was like, this isn't viable and it won't last. And that, of course, is never the case. Like, when things sort of progress and when people have user experiences, it's really hard to put that stuff back in the box. We've certainly seen it turn into things that I know I never first saw. And one of the reasons that I'm not teaching is I have no desire to teach online. I am not a lead actor. I am like a supporting role or producer type. Like I thrive in the room with people. Like that's where I shine, like feeding off of people. I've never been able to make that transition to, just being myself, speaking in that sort of way. So it shifted things for me immediately in that way. I mean, I also certainly didn't expect to end up here and doing what I'm doing here personally, but the business itself, and I want to also, I had a very good mentor early on, Jay Murphy, Meg, if you remember, good old Jay. And one of the things she drilled into me is do not get weird about this being a business ever. Like you got to be able to talk about it as a business. You got to be able to look at it as a business, because everyone will say, oh, like it's yoga and I don't want to pay for it, but you are giving part of you and you deserve to be paid. And if people care about you, they'll care if you have a roof over your head. They'll care if you have food on your plate, and not just basic stuff. Like you need to be able to take care of yourself. And so don't ever confuse this as not being a business. There's not a single guru who hasn't survived off of this. So removing that stigma, I think is important. I think it's important for anyone starting out, whether, having been teaching and now moving into yoga therapy and seeing individual clients, like it is powerful and impactful to understand that, you are running a business. This is an industry and you need to survive in it.
Yes. And, how you keep the principles
yes
of what are yoga, that has to be first and foremost.
Yes, that's super important. Meg, I think you were going to say something as we roundtable here.
Related a little bit to like an economy of scale, right? The business of yoga. When 2020 happened, a lot of teachers were out of work and they were trying to do it on their own and running online classes on their own, which was incredibly difficult because it became whose teacher's class can you attend, and you weren't at a studio anymore. And so there was a challenge in that transition right at 2020. But I think this also relates to, Chase's comment about, being true to the teaching, which relates to very much the relationship of teacher and student. Who are you taking your classes from? Why are you drawn to that person? The format we've realized can be online or in person, and we like to do a mix. But for us, it has to do with relationship. And this is, I think, what has drawn me so much to staying and continuing in the Vini Yoga tradition and staying with Chase as a teacher, as an employer as well, and also with my mentor of now 14 years, that there's a relationship. They know me. There's something very personal here. I hadn't seen Chase in so many years, Chase. I see you on the computer, but to see you again in person last month, and it was like, oh yeah, it actually wasn't a big deal to see you in person because our relationship is so strong. And that's not just from working, it's a quality of connection that we allow for online, which I think makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's a huge thing to look at, because they're like, it's easy to get into these types of conversations and to talk about what we don't like. But, I had my niece and nephew in their very young formative ages were in Germany. But just like to what you say, Meg, because of things like iPad and FaceTime and Skype at a point, it was like I've had a consistent, continuous relationship with them. Like my niece used to run around with me on the iPad going, "Mommy, hold my auntie, Mommy," like Or like I'd go visit and then I'd like be leaving and she'd be like, Auntie, go back in box. And it's like, yeah, okay. Like that seamlessness, that continuity, and especially around I was struggling with this word earlier, specificity, and the way in which, especially in a lineage like ours, the online world opens us up to allow those who are looking for us, those who are looking to study in this lineage, those who are looking to study with Chase, because that's one of the beautiful things about online is like you can actually really find your teacher. You don't have to live in their city anymore, right? Like prior to us all doing this, you kind of had to mostly pick the people in your vicinity. Unless you're crazy like Meg and willing to fly to San Francisco every weekend, which I would not.
Flyer mile.
Yeah.
I think what happened for most people with the progress of a student is they find a yoga class that meets their location and their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they find something that's easy for them to attend at a time that they like, that they like. That's and it's not about teacher first. It's about convenience and about when can they go, and then they see things that are happening in their life, and they see things that are changing, and they want to know more, and that person becomes involved with a teacher training, or there's some way that the studio where they're doing it is teaching, and so they do their first 200-hour teacher training. After that, they want to go more. Then they start to be looking around like, well, what is out there and what can I do? And with the transition of the pandemic, where all of a sudden everybody's online, it gets to be a point where that transition from what's convenient and let me find a teacher that's aligned or that I liked, etc. All of a sudden, everything is convenient, and then everything is video recorded, so you don't have to be there, so you can do it at the quote convenience of your own home and time, and so then that changes the experience completely. It's no longer any kind of community.
Yeah.
And it's no longer really a relationship. It becomes a relationship in the way that, it's a one-way relationship. The teacher doesn't know you. It's like some sort of famous artist or something, or a movie star where you admire their work, but they have no idea that you even saw their work. And I think that's one of the things at our institute that we really don't do. Like I see a lot of teacher training programs where some portion of it, even 100%, is pre-recorded online videos that you watch, quote, on your own time. And then there's some mechanism for you to ask questions, like posting in a chat somewhere. And we just there's no relationship there. That's just not yoga. That's like watching a movie.
And to borrow a phrase you use often, it's like there's different things that serve a purpose when you go from gross to subtle or from macro to micro. And as we were sort of prepping to getting warmed up to come onto this, we talked about, I have a ceramics teacher here locally, and she's literally this week was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a 200-hour training and I kind of want to pick your brain, and she's just someone that, like so many of us start out of like, hey, I've been doing yoga for years. She happens to have her master's in education, and she's like, I just think it'd be really fun to have a class once or twice a week. And she's like, but I'm looking at these local programs, and designed mostly for the local area. One of the programs she was looking at it's like a 3-month program. It's 2 nights a week online for 3 hours each session, and then they have like 3 weekend intensives together. And I have to tell you, I got so sad because everyone that's in this business, to some extent, they had a life-changing experience in their 200 hour. I mean, there's a lot of things about 200 hours that, again, like we could get on the like, hey, it's not enough. It, you know, like it actually doesn't set people up for true success. 200 hours are sort of become teacher training mills, right? Like they're over saturating the market.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've made it anywhere beyond that, it's because your life changed. And your life changed because of the community you made, because of what you experienced with others in community. I mean, like, it got me thinking, like, what's going to happen to like that next gen, like 5 years from now? How is it going to feel to have a bunch of people that trained in such an isolated space? Now, just one more point, Meg, I know you want to jump in here, but like, that's the gross end, right? Like, it's like, hey, when you start to get to the point in which we have trainings, like that specificity, we start to get more subtle, more micro, more defined, right? You've started to find your teacher. The utility of being online comes back in, because once again, like Chase Bossart, you are in one place at any given time, right? And there's only a handful of personal students of Mr. Desikachar that people can study with around today, you know, like, so you kind of have to meet people where they are, because what we want to do is keep this lineage alive. We want these teachings to go out, and the best way for us to do that, but we also keep our online offerings, you know, when online portions of our training, cameras are on, chat is live, we have assistants and advisors that add spice to the chat. They answer questions. Like, it's very interactive. People can like literally interrupt you and ask you a question for clarity. I mean, it is a classroom setting, and it's not going to try to make it out like it's a perfect substitute. But again, like, you're looking at the needs at this end of the spectrum. Was down at 200 hour. I don't want to sound negative, but there's not a lot of difference from one 200 hour program to another. I mean, it's your high school diploma.
Just like to note that we don't hold 200 hour teacher.
We don't have one currently. So we're looking at
it. That's why there's no difference.
Right.
Meg,
yeah, but we're looking at it. Yeah, go.
Thanks, Jess. Although we're all so passionate about the educational component of this lifestyle and practice, because it has made such a difference in our lives. And it's challenging to see the educational structure of it continue to evolve in ways that we feel maybe diminish some of that quality of content and connection with the material, with the lifestyle of it. For example, I had a girlfriend forward to me continuing education from Yoga Alliance around trauma education that was completely non-contact, all pre-recorded. And like, all my alarm bells, like red flags waving in the distance. The people that are attracted to trauma trainings, right? We don't even need to finish that sentence. When discussing case studies around trauma, you need the interactions, you need the nuance, you need discussion. You want to hear I want to hear other people's comments, because in other people's comments are the ahas. You want, for us, traveling through a cohort of a closed cohort of people that you can feel safe to share. And speaking as a student who's been through cohorts with Chase, sharing personally things that you're realizing, because it's not like you're just getting the information of a training. You are integrating the experience for yourself to become a therapist that can hold that for other people, right? There's so much richness in those relationships and interactions. And I think that's another reason, not only the bad dad jokes do I love about Mr. Bossart and the singing, which really does reach to my heart and soul, but the ability that when we're in discussion, of course, to be able to say pass, and no one needs to put their stuff out, right? But that can be held in a very private way as well, through mentorship, through assistance, right? Because everyone has these moments. But that, Chase, you teach in a way that You're asking for feedback. You want to hear that the people and participants there are integrating. And then you weave that experience in to the discussion.
I think that this is really important part. Mr. Deshikachar used to say all the time, yoga is relationship. And that was his favorite definition of yoga, or at least the one that he, commented on so often. And what does that mean? Well, it can apply to just about everything. There is a perceiver, something is perceived, there's a link, and how do we manage that link, and what happens as a result of the perception, and how does that change the perceiver, etc. And to have something that is only pre-recorded is just not following the principles of yoga. So, all our classes are recorded, and some people do only watch the recordings, but they are really intended to be live discussions. And there's I'm, as the teacher, I'm not showing up with a plan and I'm going to teach ABCD come hell or high water. I have a direction. I know where we're going. I know what it is that we need to cover. And then we sit down with everybody, and I want to hear from people. I want to know, what is your digestion, right? What has happened from the last time we met? What got discussed, or what was the experience that resulted in that you just were thinking about and this past week, and let's talk about it. Or what gave you pause for, like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. I'm not sure how did I hear you right when you, etc. And what that gives me as the teacher is access to what people are doing, and what is being digested, and where they're bumping up against things. And then I'm adjusting the content of the training or the content of the class to what is coming back from them. And so, of course, we have all these recordings. Everybody can come and do it. But the intention is, this is a live discussion that you come and you participate in, and you learn from other people. And the last thing to say here is that people in support groups, people come together who have a similar issue, and what they say is their experience, but it has an impact on the other person. So in our classes, they're similar to support groups in that what we're all doing is yoga, and what we're all doing is trying to understand what is yoga and how does it work, and what is the process of this path. And when you hear the comments that your people are making, then that reflects back on your own experience and gives you something. So it's not just that I'm the teacher, or that whoever is teaching is the teacher. It's that your cohort is also the teacher. And we specifically have assistantship programs to have people come back through and do the program a second, third, fourth time, because we want the experienced people in the cohorts that are going to be asking different questions than the beginner people who are just experiencing Vinyasa Yoga for the first time, etc. So it's like a really rich and supportive experience.
Well, and to take that, both your points, I think gosh, there's so much there. Meg, kind of circling back to your point about, the trauma training, and it's like, often people looking to work in trauma-informed work, or to help people recover from trauma, have experienced trauma themselves, right? And like the idea that you're going through something like that, or listening to content that may trigger you, and you're just alone with it. I mean, and kind of also pulling from what you said, Chase, about the support group. I mean, imagine getting sober with videos online. Nobody's doing that. I mean, if you really want to like talk about how different that impact is, or imagine like, you know, because even if you're listening to our recordings, you're listening to a discussion, right? Yoga is a living lineage, right?
Yeah.
There's no absolutes here. There's no like hardened facts and hardened ways in which people understand this material. It's understood in many different ways. And I mean, I say all the time in our meetings, like, we have no competition. There's no competition in this business, because you need to be our student. Like, if you're not our student, this isn't going to be a relationship, right? Like, we're going to be forcing something that doesn't fit. So every person doing this is the right person for someone, and we're not competing. Because if I'm winning you over, or like selling you just to get you in my program, like, that's not good for any of us. You're going to not enjoy it. But in listening, you know, having these discussions that you can listen into in this space, what it is it's the opportunity to at least hear it more three-dimensionally, right? The others, you know, it'd be like listening to something that's just like, yeah, God is real. Like that, like that's a sure. I mean, there's truth in that for some people. Other people are like, you're totally wrong. I mean, imagine just that, like, so God is real, and here's why, and it's a recording, and now you're gonna go out and teach it. Like, no, like, no.
The other day, we were in a meeting. Chase tasked me to follow up with a student who was taking our recordings, watching the recordings of Yoga Sutras, and it seemed like moved well through chapter 1 and was continuing on. And Chase had asked me to reach out to this gentleman, just send him an email, see how he's doing. And I emailed him. He was so excited to hear from us. He has not expected it. He was thrilled by hearing from Yoga Well and was really impressed and mentioned a few things. But most important, and I bring this up because we wanted to know that he was held. He mentioned his mentor. He's seeing Whitney. And I was like, great. Things that are going to come up for you in listening to those discussions and having that content, you have someone to go discuss that with that has the knowledge, that's holding the space for you. You have someone that's looking out for you. Again, this comes back to relationship. And even the way that we use mentorship, even from different Vinyasa traditions, I'm really realizing is so different. Having someone supervise or co-create or give me my daily practice. Someone who's checking in with me. Granted, I've had this relationship for over a decade now. Someone I'm checking in with on a regular basis about my lifestyle. How am I integrating things? How am I transitioning through motherhood and shifts in employment and shifts in relationships? And everywhere my yoga practice affects who I am as a person is held. And I see Chase doing this with students. I see Jess doing this with students. I do this with students. I see the mentors doing this with students. I see that we have a student liaison because we understand that there's a hierarchical relationship between student and teacher and mentor and teacher. And there's someone else in case everyone needs someone else. And I am so happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
The conscious intention of what we're doing here is creating a container. So in our trainings, the container is set up so that each individual person has a daily personal practice. How do you get a daily personal practice? You work with a mentor one-on-one who designs something for you, which you then do, and through that, your relationship with the mentor, you revise and change based on what's going on in your life and what you need. So this is one point of contact. The second point of contact is every week there's a practice class. Wednesday mornings, led by me, the executive director of the Institute. So there's a way that you have your personal practice every day. That's the main holding. And then once a week, there's a contact practice-wise with the lineage. That practice class is designed to be a broad range of experiences. So if you stay in that class over years, you will cover all kinds of different techniques. It's really about stay there, see what happens, have this something special happens in the class. Then that's about being yoga, right? Because all of that is the experience. All of that is feeling. All of that is the practice of yoga. And then out of that, we also have these informational classes. And the informational classes, in our teacher trainings, they meet once a week for 3 hours, and then once a month for more on 6 hours, 5 hours on Saturday. And then with our therapist trainings, we meet online once a month for information. And then every 6 weeks, we have 5 days where we meet half days online. And then we get together, I think it's twice a year for 5 days. And there's all of this happens over at least a year and a half. So you have time to be in the container and have the container work on you while you're getting the information, while you have the opportunity to ask all of these questions. Our therapist training is almost 4 years long, specifically because we believe that in order to be a good teacher, you have to have had the experiences which are teaching. So what is yoga? Yoga is a way of being. It has to be implemented into your life and into your relationships. And if that doesn't happen, I don't know how you can really teach it. I mean, you can lead people through, the physical exercises or positions or etc. But even that, all of that is linked into this bigger structure of ideas about what it means to be alive, what it is to have a relationship with the world, with somebody else, with what you eat, with what you wear, etc. And all the ideas are what to do about all of that and how to shift it. So we specifically make our trainings long so that you come into the container, then you are in the container doing all of this work, getting the ideas, keeping it fresh, keeping it at the front of your mind, and that brings about transformation. Then, at the end of the training, we have a joke that says, "Now you're ready to begin studying," because there's so much information. It is like a fire hose of information. And the first time around the training, it's like I'm being challenged informationally. There's a lot to know, but also it's like this way of thinking and being oriented in the world is so different that it's hard to actually ask questions about the material because so much is changing in my life and in how I view things and how I think about my relationships, etc. So we have set this up that we have assistantship programs which bring people back through our trainings for free a second time. And in doing that second time, it's like their feet are now on the ground and they've done a lot of heavy lifting. So they're familiar not only with the information, but they can see how the information applies in their life and why we practice this way with this breathing connected to these movements and organizing the movements in such a way and the breathing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then the second time through, now I can ask my questions. I know this concept. I know that concept. They seem like they're the same, but different. Can you explain that?
Well, and this gets into like the living lineage piece, right? Like it's different every time. Like the fact that it evolves, that you evolve and you understand the material differently, that like the person you are at the start, because while it's a lot of information, it's specifically designed to cycle. So we tell people all the time, like, it's okay to start where you are and to feel like you're not, that you don't know what we're talking about. Just stick with it, because this all comes back. This all comes back. And by the third or fourth time you hear it, I mean, and this was a common thing that was said even at Core Power, just like we would tell people. And when I did teacher trainings, like you can even anatomical sort of cue of just like, like engage your low core in this position or whatever. You can say that 1,000 times and the person's only going to hear it the 1,000th and first. Like you have to just sort of like trust that if people keep showing up, eventually they're going to understand what it is that you're trying to teach. And I, at one point I had a little technical glitch. So I've moved around and I lost some of what you guys were talking about. But when Meg, you mentioned the gentleman that was so happy to hear from you in email, this is just a point I want to make, because one of the things about everything being online and us being so inundated with emails is like, outside of our newsletters and of course like our larger listserv, like we're a business again. Yeah, we don't have the time to write 5,000 of you individually, but you are getting an email from a real person here. People like we send, oftentimes we reach out to people for things and we don't hear back because I don't think they think like we have the ability to be that niche with you. Like you will talk to somebody here. And I just, that relationship space, it's important to us. Customer service, we might not be fast. We are a small operation and there are more of you than us. We're human, but, as humans, we hope we have some grace there, but we're human and we want to talk to you. And if you get an email saying, hey, we notice like you haven't logged in to your class lately. Like, are you still digging this? Like, that's real. We're paying attention.
For me, I think just to contrast this in what is sort of out there, there's these trainings that are so big that you have to give your questions before the class and turn off your cameras. We don't operate that way because we are interested in the integration of the information. The focus here is about your understanding and your transformation. And that can only happen if there is some integration of the information. So everything has to be, it has to come, we have to know what's getting integrated or not. And when I say we, that means, the leader of the training, that also teacher of each individual class, and your mentor, right? So we have set up all of these points to hold the person in their yoga journey to support the integration. And believing that with integration, information is now in you. You don't need to prepare to teach. You just show up and teach what is in you. And what do you teach? Not what you want to teach, but what you see will be useful to the other person. Mm-hmm. So, like, to have that is complicated. And it's not like you can just show up and be like, okay, this is how you do these 26 things. And this is what you say to get each person to do these 26 things. And you don't need to know anything else because these 26 things are the best thing. Mm-hmm. We don't believe that. We believe that each individual person needs to have whatever is happening molded to them to meet their needs. And for some people, it will be those 26 things. But for the vast majority of other people, it will not be those things. And to have a teacher that understands how to modify a form while keeping the function is only possible through integration and experience, right? So we don't even call our quote teacher training a teacher training. We call it a practitioner training, because you want to be a good teacher, you have to have these experiences and integrate them. And then if you have them and they're integrated, then you'll be able to explain them to somebody, and you can teach somebody else. I don't have to tell you this is what you got to do to get the person to do it. No, let me help you do it and know it, and then you'll be able to help somebody else do it and know it.
I'm so excited. There's a Goethe quote. I'm pronouncing his name wrong because I don't know German. I ran across because it's my kid's birthday, and it's a comment about, as a parent, your role is to give your child roots and wing. Mm-hmm. And this is also our educational component, right? The roots, the resources, the practical knowledge, the scope of practice, the personal integration, and the creativity, and the capacity, and the ability to do it on their own.
One thing we haven't really said here, and we've kind of talked around, is we're not what people think of when they think of yoga. And like that's a badge of honor as far as I'm concerned. I mean, again, no competition, because even places like Core Power, I mean, so many of the schools and the teachings and the teachers that are further down the line that are more lineage based or whichever it is, like, benefit from so many people walking through the doors of somewhere and starting. Right. And maybe it is a group class on a Saturday morning that you just really like, and there's loud music and you're sweaty. But I always believed, like, yoga's bigger than all of that. Like, yoga will take care of itself. And because yoga is what it is, it can have all of those components that seem un-yogic, but the yoga will work. And for a lot of people, that suddenly that Saturday morning class with 50 other people that's really hot and really sweaty, it's still good. They still love it. They're still moving their body. They're still having fun, but something's missing. And then they go, oh, well, there's a teacher at the studio on Tuesday morning who, a little bit stricter, it's that path we talked about in the beginning. And, we emphasize here the personal practice. Like, we don't have a lot of group classes. We do have some, and they're important to our model and to our community and ways in which we connect. But what we're doing here is personal work. We talk about it on the back end that in many ways we are a spiritual and personal transformation center that uses yoga as our modality. That's different, right? Like, it's like, hey, you're coming to us because things in your life are not working, and you've arrived at the space that you are actually in a place to make change. Over time, slowly, this is not a quick fix. Again, these are years. These are, there's an investment here in lots of levels. And so it's not for everybody right now. And that's okay, because we also make a point of knowing what else is out there and saying, hey, if you call us and you're like, I want to be in your therapist training, and I've been teaching yoga for 2 months at my local gym and been practicing for 6, but now I want to be a yoga therapist. Our training might not be ready for you right now. And maybe our institute isn't ready for you right now, but we'll help you find that and be here when you are. And, kind of wrapping up sort of where we started, or coming back to this point, like, when you talk about the business of yoga and the integrity of it, so much of what we're talking about here and the values that we hold, they cost us business.
Yeah.
Like, we turn people away at the expense of our values. And that's important to us. You know, we have people writing in right now from all over the world that are like, I will do your training if I can do it 100% online recorded. Like, I can only watch the recordings. Yeah, you could be there. We could take your money. But that doesn't feel authentic to what we do. And that's a hard line to hold. I mean, it's business is business. And part of the reason that we're seeing some of these changes that we're talking about, part of the reason we've seen any changes, teacher training was a massive disruptor to what yoga is, right? Like, studios used to only have one teacher training every couple of years. And now it's become part of the yoga studio model that people can't seem to break away from. So there's an integrity component to a lot of what we're talking about and why we do what we do. And it can be a hard line to hold. Like, you know, as we all know, like, you know, no one's buying a penthouse around here, like, or anywhere.
Well, you know, I mean, I'm just, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about how it's not only that things are like pre-recorded only, or that you can take the modules out of order. Like, it doesn't matter which module you take because it's just information, and you get the information here, you get the information there. It's almost like it's you know, you're studying something that doesn't require the integration. You just give you the information, and that's not how we view yoga. We view yoga as a transformation first and foremost, and that transformation is it's what results from the information. So we have incredibly high quality information. We have a amazing philosophical structure and very coherent principles underlying what we do. And we could present things like, here's your meditation module. Here's everything you need to do. But actually, we don't believe that that's how you integrate. So our stuff is like sprinkled in. And as you said earlier, you know, we teach in what we call a spiral. So, and we tell people, this is a lot. If something comes by and you're overwhelmed and you don't catch it all, don't worry. It will come back around again, albeit in a little bit different form, but it'll come back around. And each time it comes back around, you'll get something different out of it because you're different. The teacher is different. The information is said, even if it's the same information, it's said in a slightly different way. The experiences that are used to support it are done in a slightly different way. The result is that there's a layering and I keep using the word integration, but that's the point. Yeah. There's an integration of it.
Yeah, and we don't market these things these way, but even our philosophy classes, like, it's not unlike a Bible study. Like, you don't, if you're interested in starting Bible study, you don't wait until they start the Bible over. Sorry.
It's
and the
true.
Yoga Sutras
It's
are
really
a lot
true.
shorter, but like you join. And like you can learn these things about like there's something you can get, and like you shouldn't be intimidated. We're so linear thinking that you hear things like chapter 1, chapter 2. Like, it's not even built that way. It's an oral tradition. There's no such thing as like linear presentation. Like, yeah, they link together and you can read it that way, but you can just join. And one last thing that I have to throw in, Chase, so what you were saying made me think is we do need to start maybe doing some merch, and I want t-shirts that say, you can't rush a lifelong practice.
Right. It's true. It's really true.
Like the Yoga Well Institute, you can't rush a lifelong practice.
Well, Just one more thing. We don't have SEVA positions at our institute.
Mm-mm.
We don't do trade. We make it available. We make the teachings available for anyone based on their financial need. And that is tuition waivers, right? So we're basically, it's not even a scholarship, because in scholarship, what happens? Somebody is providing money that if somebody else doesn't have the money, then the organization still is receiving money, but that doesn't happen for us. We just waive the tuition and we don't get the income. And so even though the Yoga Well Institute looks like a business because we sell classes and we do, sell trainings and things like that, we're just not set up as a business. We're really set up as a spiritual organization, or as a self-help organization, self-empowerment organization, etc. And that is expensive, because really, if you care about the transformation of the person, it can't be done virtually. It can't be done in an isolated silo. It has to be done in relationship. So that means the person has to develop a relationship with their body, with their breath, with their perspectives, with their emotions. And how do you do that? With somebody else holding the space, helping them to do that, with somebody else giving the information and answering the questions, etc. That is, so in a lot of ways, we're really much closer to a spiritual center or a church as an organization than we are a business. Yeah.
But the business is also we all, back end wise, this again, not being a SEVA position, like we do pay, and we pay our faculty, and like that's a value as well. And again, it can be limiting, like we can only pay so many hours. We can only pay for so many guest teachers in a certain program based on what we're bringing in, based on, because it's not just, we work with people. If you start a training with us and you're doing all right and everything's great, and in the middle of it, which often happens, especially in these 4-year-long trainings, your life bottoms out, we're gonna work with you. So oftentimes people come to us and they're great, but then, hey, they can't, their income is slashed in half. Okay. And it's not all about giving it away. We come to agreeable spaces because our teachings are of value. I need a roof over my head. Meg needs a roof over her head. Chase, you can figure it out. But
Unfortunately, that's the way it works out. That is true.
Yeah. But no, like everyone that's involved, like it's like we're investing ourselves and our time, and there's investment that comes back. And so it's a slow process. Like we talk about this all the time. How do we align our values with being the change we want to see in the world? And there's a lot of talk about t-shirts. It's on a lot of t-shirts. But Meg and I can certainly talk to the amount of people who had t-shirts on that said "Be the change you want to see in the world," that would cut us off in traffic on the way to our own classes. It's a lot. It's a practice in itself.
The yoga industry has changed so much over the past 15 years. I went to graduate school instead of being a yoga teacher in the early 90s because I couldn't look my dad in the eye and say, I'm going to be a yoga teacher, right? And now it's like such a big, huge business. I had somebody that I don't know very well ask me a few months back, like, how are you doing? And I was like, kind of taken back, and he's like, well, sometimes when you get in these new fad industries like yoga, they blossom for a while and then they kind of back off. Is everything okay? I was thinking, oh God, help me. I've been lumped in. What to do? But I think it's important for us as an organization that we really are clear about what we're about, and that everything we do is organized in a way to support what we're about. And I think we do a pretty good job of that.
Still here.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Meg. Thanks for all you do for us as an organization and for our community and all the support you provide. And thanks for being here to talk about it today.
Thank you, Chase.
Thank you, Chase, for
It's a treat.
leading the charge.